welcome everyone to Gems from the Wisdom Traditions, a conversation circle. And this is offered every Saturday by Still and Moving Center. We start every one of our conversations by having a reading, and it's from the Still and Moving Center Almanac. And we're almost to the end of the year 2022. This is the quote from Henry David Thoreau that we've been using this year with our theme of being truly human. We call this quote, conscious endeavor. I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his life by a conscious endeavor. It is something to be able to paint a picture or to carve a statue, and so to make a few objects beautiful. But it is far more glorious to carve and paint the very atmosphere and the medium through which we look, which morally we can do. To affect the quality of the day, that is the highest of arts. So we are taking up this week the idea of true giving. Of course, leading up to Christmas time for some people, Hanukkah today for others. And there's just something to me that's very warm and cozy about the holiday season. And so the idea of gathering around to hear a story just seemed really like the heartwarming thing to do at this time of year. And I know of no better storyteller than my own mom. She's been storytelling in different public schools. Well, first she was an elementary school librarian, and then a volunteer storyteller for decades. And she has told thousands of stories and told stories to more thousands of students. So she is someone who really loves what she does, and people appreciate it. So I hope all of you will too. And she's going to take up the story by O. Henry called A Gift of the Magi, The Gift of the Magi. So take it away, Mom. I should also mention that her name is Nancy Auker. So Nancy Auker.
Okay, $1.87, 60 cents of it in pennies. Pennies that she had saved one or two at a time at the grocers, at the butchers, at the bakers. And now she had $1.87, and tomorrow would be Christmas. There was clearly nothing to do but for Della to flop down on the shabby little couch and wail and cry. How she howled. She lived in a drab flat. It was second, third story. And downstairs in the vestibule, the sign on the letterbox read, James Dillingham Young. Now, when James came home in the door, he was greeted, "Oh, Jim," and given lots and lots of hugs. But now she was done with her cry finally, and she wandered over to the window, very dully looked out, and she saw a gray cat walking on a gray fence in a gray yard. And then she thought, Christmas, what am I going to do? I really, really want to buy Jim something worthy of being his wife. And what can I do with $1.87? And then she noticed a slim window that was between a slim mirror that was between the two windows. And she looked in it, and her eyes lit up, and then the color left her face. But nevertheless, she took a big pin out of her hair and took all her hair down and let it fall its full length. Now, there were two possessions that the Dame James Dillingham Youngs really treasured. One was Jim's gold watch, which had been his father's and his grandfather's. The other was Della's hair. Her hair reached to her knees, and it was rippling, shining. It was a rippling, shining cascade of brown water. So beautiful. And she perked up, and then she slowed down, and I think a tear dropped from her eye onto the worn rug. Nevertheless, she went, and on went her old brown jacket, on went her old brown hat, and she scurried in her skirts down the stairs into the street. And she bustled along the street until she came to a sign over a shop that says, hair doings of all types. And she rushed up the stairs and said, Madam Safroni, will you buy my hair? Madam said, I buy hair. Take off your hat, let's have a look at it. Now, with an experienced hand, she ran through that beautiful, shiny brown hair. And she said, I'll give you $20. Oh, hurry, give it to me quick. And for the next 2 hours, Della ransacked that town looking for a gift that was perfect for Jim. Finally, she found it. It was a platinum watch chain. Jim had been having an old leather chain on that beautiful watch. This was a perfect gift for him. It was just right. And it was very quiet, but very valuable, just like her Jim. And so she left the shop with her 87 cents. And she went home, took out her curling iron, put it on the stove to warm. And in the next 40 minutes, she tried to repair that ravaged hair, that hair that looked like that because of generosity and love. And at the end of that time, her hair was covered with tiny little curls, all side by side. She looked like an errant schoolboy. And when she went to look in the mirror, she says, oh, if Jim doesn't give me a second look, he's going to kill me. He's going to tell me I look like a Coney Island chorus girl, but what could I do? I only had $1.87. By 7 o'clock, she had made the coffee. She took the fry pan, put it on the back of the stove to warm. They were having chops for supper. And then she took that beautiful platinum chain in her palm of her hand and went and sat on the edge of the table near the door. Jim was never late. And she heard his step way down. And when he came in the door, he opened it, turned around, closed it. He needed a winter coat really badly, and he had no gloves. He turned around, and the expression on his face, Della couldn't read that expression. It terrified her. She said, Jim, don't look at me that way. Please, Jim, don't. I had to go. I cut my hair and sold it, Jim. I had to because I couldn't go through Christmas without giving you a present. Please, Jim, don't look at me like that. And he said, your hair's gone? Yes, Jim, it's gone. It's gone, sold. And, it's okay, Jim. I mean, I'm me without my hair, ain't I? You mean your hair's gone? Yes, Jim, my hair's gone. Be good to me. It's Christmas Eve, boy. Oh, Jim, I have to show you the present I've got for you. And Jim wakened up. He was kind of in a trance, and he said, "Don't get me wrong, Dale. There ain't nothing no haircut could do to make me love you any less than I do. But you'll see why you had me gone for a minute." He reached in his coat pocket and took out a package and put it on the table. And Della reached over, tore off the ribbon and the string, and she gave a shout of joy. And then she gave a hysterical cry. Jim hugged her to him while she cried and cried. On the table lay this set of combs that were in the window of a Broadway store that she had looked at every time she went by. She yearned for those combs to put in her hair. She ached just looking at them. She never guessed she would ever own them, and now she did. But the tresses that those combs would adorn were gone. She looked up and Jim says, "Jim, my hair grows really fast, really, really fast, Jim." Oh, and then like a singed cat, she opened up her hand to show him the platinum chain. And she said, "Ain't this a beauty, Jim? It's just for you. It's just like you. Now you can look at your watch 100 times a day and everybody will admire it. Where's your watch, Jim? I want to put it on, see how it looks." Instead of obeying her, Jim went over, slouched down on the couch and put his hands behind his head and said, "Dale, let's put our presents away till next year. They're too nice to use right now. Because you see, I sold my watch to buy you the combs. And now, why don't you put the chops on for dinner?" That's it. O. Henry wrote that story, which Renee and I think are so beautiful, about two loving young people who lived in a cheap flat and who sacrificed their very most precious things for each other. And it was nice telling you this story. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Mom. I was wondering how we might be able to relate that to this idea of the gift of the Magi.
The three that brought the gold, frankincense, and myrrh were kings. So they didn't sacrifice anything to bring those gifts. I guess that Magi means why? Is it wise? I don't know why those were such wise gifts, as a matter of fact. And tell her what you said about Louisa May Alcott's story, Three Little Women.
And Little Women, Jo sells her hair for something too, like to get her dad a gift.
But I looked up, and O. Henry and Louisa May Alcott's lives were during the same time, but she was 95 when she died, and he only lived to 40 or something. But she wrote the Little Women before he was born. So yeah, maybe he knew about that story. It's kind of interesting to know whether he took that idea of cutting off your hair to get a gift or not. We don't know that.
Yeah, that would. Well, I'm looking at this quote by William Sidney Porter, who says, "But in the last word to the wise of these days, let it be said, of all who give gifts, these two were the wisest. Of all who give and receive gifts, such as they are wisest." So I think it's the matter of the wisdom of the gifts that is being stressed more than the fact that they were kings who were already rich. Yeah. Diana?
I was thinking about gift giving and what it seemed like. I remember Jesus saying something about the person that gave the person that was poor that gave 1 penny was more than the people that give lots as if they're rich, because it meant more that they sacrificed, or the little drummer boy that plays his drum, you know. And it's like, how do we, when we think of giving gifts, it's like having the other person's feeling the love and the caring for the other person enough that I'm willing to let go of something that's precious for me to give to the other person. And whether this couple used their gifts or not, it was the idea that they both loved each other so much that they gave a gift that meant something deeply. They let go of something deeply for them to be able to give to the other person. And it makes, it's interesting when we think of Christmas or Hanukkah and how gifts are given and how much money is spent. And, it's like, how do we take the other person into account and really make it something meaningful, whether it be an experience or whether it be, it's not the amount of money, it's the thought and care and love that goes into whatever we give. And I think that's true in all of our life, not just at Christmas. It's like, how do we show our love and care for those around us? It may be a word, it may be a thought, it may be a thing, appreciation, but it's like really seeing the love that the two of them had, that they were willing to sacrifice something important for them to give to the other.
One thing that comes to my mind after hearing this story, I had never heard it before. So first of all, I loved the way you told it. It was beautifully done. And I think that out of all the Christmas songs, we get so tired of hearing the same old song. But there is one song in particular that really is kind of a very poignant song. It's about a little boy who asks this man, or he's at a shoe store because he wants to buy his mom shoes because she's sick in the hospital, and it alludes to the fact that she's probably going to pass. So he asked this person to help him buy shoes for his mom because she's going to pass and meet Jesus. And this kind, good Samaritan buys the shoes for the kid. And I just think that is such a very well done imagery song that everybody can imagine. And it really tugs at the heartstrings, and it's not one that you hear that often. So I think that when you do, it just really gives you a moment to kind of reflect and take a pause from all the chaoticness and everything, and just really remember the true meaning of the giving spirit and the joy that something little can bring to somebody.
It was just a wonderful, wonderful story, Nancy. Thank you for telling it. And I mean, I think the deep theme of that story is the idea of sacrifice, which to me is like unconditional giving without expecting anything in return, as well as giving probably your most precious thing. And I was thinking, I just heard that Louisa May Alcott, as well as Walt Whitman, during the Civil War, worked in the hospitals, taking care of all the injured soldiers, whether they were Union soldiers or Confederate soldiers. But Louisa May Alcott got tuberculosis, I believe, while working in the hospital, and came close to dying, but recovered, fortunately. But they exhibited kind of the same spirit of true sacrifice on behalf of these injured soldiers. And throughout the various religious traditions, pretty much all the religious traditions, the idea of great religious teachers such as Christ and Buddha, and also in Hinduism, is the idea that there are these beings that gain enlightenment, but renounce the fruits of it to come back and help humanity. And that's the idea really behind the Christ story, as well as the story of Buddha. And so this idea of sacrifice that's exhibited or exemplified by the two people in your story. I think it's something so fundamental and so deep to human nature and humanity that it just has such a power to it. And thank you for telling it.
Rena?
Thank you so much for this beautiful story. I was never raised with Christmas stories, so it's really moving. But I was raised with a lot of stories of gift giving, and how much is the real gift is when one sacrifices. And this story, I mean, if you think about, they both gave their most precious possessions, but in the end, they didn't have they couldn't, she couldn't use the comb, he couldn't see her as, you know, with hair, the one she loves a lot. So they both gave. So where are we left with? What are we left with? Is the I'm just thinking about the nuances of the story. They're left with that bond, that the precious bond they get created beyond words, beyond gifts, beyond any materialistic, any physical things, just left with that feeling of, I mean, imagine if somebody does that for me, and that kind of, just you go, okay, let's put him away for the next year, right? So we don't need to worry about right now, because the most precious gift was their friendship and their love. I was reminded by, there is a temple in India, which is Tirupati temple, is the most richest temple in the world. And the people, to please the god, they shave their heads, the men and women both. And there are, you know, piles of beautiful long hair of South Indian women to the waist, and they just completely shave them and give it to God. And I'm just wondering, why are they giving their hair? Why does God need hair? So I asked this friend and said, God doesn't need hair. It is your devotion. It's what you, the most precious, your hair that you wrote, that's what you want to give to the God. So it's very fascinating, very beautiful. I want to hear one more story, but maybe we won't have time. I love the way the stories are told. I love your voice. I love the depth of it. So thank you so much. So good to see you, Mom. I can't call names to moms.
You know, that does remind me when Cliff and I were in India, and we were going past one of the temples. It could have been Chidambaram, but it may have been another one. And there was a family that was preparing for a special ceremony for their one-year-old child. And it was a ceremony of giving thanks. And so as we were passing by, the father of the family was having his head shaved in preparation for that ceremony. And I think the wife had done the same. And it is something that I've heard is done when one wants to, like, self-purify, in the sense of giving up kind of our worldly desires, anything that has to do with our egos. And there's something about that shaving of the hair that signifies, well, actually, in a lot of traditions, the hair is said to hold a lot of power, a lot of magnetic energy. In Hawaiian, it would be called mana. So taking somebody's hair away, and you could see that in the Native American traditions, is taking away of their power. And so to do it voluntarily, to give up one's hair voluntarily, is a really big sacrifice, even if it's not within the context of a story like this. It's partly having to do with, yes, giving up a certain aspect of one's physical beauty, but it's also considered to be like a certain giving up of a certain amount of one's energy for a lot of traditions. Roger? So glad
Well,
you-
there's Hi, there's the story, of course, of Samson and Delilah, and all his power was in his hair. And he was a great warrior. And when he fell asleep and she cut his hair off, he was powerless. So I think that power in the hair follows somewhere, although I don't know if it was in the original story that we heard, which was very beautiful. And I think it shows the depth of motive, as everyone is saying. Interestingly, and this is something I've thought about, and where motive comes in the Jewish tradition, there's a hierarchy of gifting. So the highest level of gifting is to give someone enough money to start his own business so he can take care of himself. Next is to give anonymously to someone you don't know. After that, it's to give anonymously to someone you do know, and then it moves down levels of giving where you're known and that sort of thing. But an emphasis on doing it without getting anything back, because nobody even knows you did it. Yet when you see the many philanthropic gifts of Jewish people in hospitals and other institutions, they always have their name right there. The Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation is a good example. Harry was Jewish, but he maybe didn't know the plan. But I guess it's wonderful to have all his buildings and the many things that other people have given, even if they do want the credit for it. So maybe that's something to think about. Is it better to make a gift even if you want something from it? Or is it better to do it without wanting? Maybe it's a hierarchy as they have in the tradition.
Probably better to give it than not having given it at all in most cases, unless one has devious intent, and then that would be another thing. And there are stories of that, I think.
I think it's easier to give a meaningful gift when people don't have the ability to buy or get something that they really want or need. But so many of us these days are able to buy what we want or what we need. And it's very difficult to find a meaningful gift, I find. I think if people have less, you can find gifts of things they really want and aren't able to have. And it's kind of the society, most of the world's still that way, of course, but we suffer from having too much in that way, I guess.
I know that many people have different views about Oprah Winfrey, but when she had her show, she used to do her favorite things. And I remember the one time she went, I think, to Mobile, Alabama to do this show, and many of her audience members were from very low eco-socioeconomical backgrounds. And it was Mobile, Alabama, where it's always muggy and warm. And she gave away UGG boots to her audience members, which really wouldn't have a purpose in that climate. And I remember one of the other gifts was, that was the first year they had the refrigerators with the TVs in them. And so they were very nice gifts, but it just didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. So I think really, regardless of what the motivation was, if she had a partnership with these, manufacturers or whatever, they were wonderful gifts. But I think that just more common ideas would have been so much more impactful for those people, because, a lot of them came from poverty level, and just having maybe, I don't know, a new set of cutlery for their kitchen or something like that would have been so much more meaningful than these grand gifts. So I think that sometimes in the world of abundance, people forget that aspect, and they think they're really doing a kind gesture, but it's not practical for the receiver. So really just giving from the heart. Even like, I like that story that Diana was saying about, even if the person only has a penny and gives, that means so much more than somebody with millions giving a grandiose gift. So
There's a saying that we truly give when we give of ourselves. And sometimes one of the most difficult things to give is something that is humbling. And an apology, for example, could be a really difficult thing to give, and might be quite precious to the receiver. And Vina was asking, what do we have left in the story after these precious things are given away? And she said there's a deepened bond. And that comes to mind. As a possibility when something like an apology is given. That's very difficult to give. Yeah, Diana.
One of the things that came to me as our children and grandchildren are all getting older, we actually ask them what they would like, because they're not little anymore. We can't just buy little toys. And so they have a certain amount of money and they get to ask for what they want. Well, what was interesting to me was they turned it around and said, Mom, what do you want? And, that was a very, how do we receive? It's like, it's like, what do I want? Yeah, like you said, Nancy, we all have so much, and it's like, our time together is very precious and things like that. But it was really interesting for each of us to have to think, what is it that I would like that I necessarily wouldn't buy for myself? That would be, I could buy it, but I don't necessarily buy it for myself. And then when we were talking, it's like, how do we receive? For many years, it was much easier, and it's much easier for me, and I keep working on it, to give than to receive. And so it's like, it's easy for me to give to people, but learning how to receive that love and receive the gifts. And I'm always grateful for any gifts that I get, but it's like being able to ask for something that we want or that we thought we'd like. It's a very strange dynamic, especially when I do it with my children, because I'm used to giving to my children and grandchildren, and they've always given to me, and they're great with what they choose for me. But it's been an interesting process of looking at that. So it's good for all of us, because we've all had, even the grandkids, they've had to look and say, what would I like, and that Grandma and so we're going to buy it for us. It's like, it's just an interesting difference that has changed as my grandchildren have gotten older.
A nice change.
I
Tina?
to add to Diana's point. So how can we really create this narrative everybody seems so stressed out during Christmas because everyone is expecting some kind of gift, some kind of, the shopping malls are full and all these. How do we create this narrative, which is like Renee was saying, apology, or this is the time to be opening our hearts up? And I think that's the story of the mom, that story told us, like that, just that coming into that self, what's most precious to me, which enhances our bond with one another, rather than just, of course, the gifts sounds fun too, of course, not to diminishing the importance of gifts as well, the material gifts, but also, how can we talk more about that there are so many ways we can give. While we are giving, we receive more in those situations. And, relationships open up and old bad feelings go away and the new light comes in. So maybe it'd be good thing to bring more and more about that kind of giving. And Kevin's point, giving Uggs to, I remember that too, I think. And I'm going, oh my gosh, that's the one thing you say, Gandhi used to say, if you give poor food, that's their gift. You don't give them, nice clothes and the rent needs to be paid. And there was this, at one time there was a tsunami, that was not long ago. And the donations coming in and people were getting their nice jackets and nice boots. They said, no, this is hot there. They don't want your clothes. They need food, they need medicine, they need shelter. So I think it's just a raising awareness about through that story, that what is giving, what is important, what is that creates, what is behind Dhanam, or the gift that, and what Cliff was saying, the Bodhisattva who lives for giving, who lives their lives, and their, each person needs different things. We don't need the same thing. And how do we be sensitive toward that?
I think it's a really good question, Veena. And I mean, we know about the situations where we may think we're helping somebody and they get really offended at the suggestion that they might need help. I know a woman who lives over on the west side of this island, on the Waianae side, and she had 3 sons who were all out boogie boarding, and she noticed that the local kids in the neighborhood didn't have boogie boards, and so she set up a whole kind of collection network of people contributing boards, companies contributing boards, people contributing money to buy boogie boards. And yet it was very, very difficult actually to give these to the children, because the parents were very resistant of the impression that they were needy. And they would rather have themselves and their children do without than to be to feel as if they were accepting charity. It was a blow to their pride. So to truly give is quite a delicate thing to do, to determine, what the need is. Sharon?
It makes me think of a story this guy told me. He had come in and he was telling me about his father, who was really rich, multimillionaire, and they lived in San Francisco. And his father gave him nothing, and he gave everything to his brother. And then, but he told me also that he had gone to Guatemala, and with this family that lived in a hut with dirt floor, and they were so happy that he came and helped them, that they gave him a whole loaf of bread. And so I tried to explain to him that whole loaf of bread probably was more than $1 million his father could have left him. It was more meaningful because it was their food, their dinner, and the $1 million to his father was nothing. I mean, whatever he had. And I says, maybe your dad saw that because you had traveled, that if he had left you the millions of dollars, that it might have burdened you, and instead of making you stronger and stuff. But I thought that was a beautiful gift. And I says the bread was worth more than $1 million your father would have left you. And I think that all your presence is the biggest gift of all.
Being present for someone.
Yes.
That's what the gift of our presence. Yeah. Yeah. To be someone who's lending a listening ear, just being by one's side during a time of trial, just to be available to help in case there's something that one can do, that kind of presence, Sharon?
Yes, I think even just you all being here, is a present in itself, like presence.
Oh,
That's why it's a big gift.
yes, I totally agree. David.
Yeah, I've been thinking this since the start of this talk about the 5 love languages, and maybe a copy of the book is the perfect gift so that we can learn, particularly those who are close to us, what their love language is. uh, giving and receiving of gifts is but one of the five. And for someone like that, that would be the ultimate gift. But you just mentioned one of the other ones, the quality time, just being present for someone. And for some people, that is the most precious gift that they can receive. You can usually read into what somebody's love language is by how they give out as well. And for me, for example, my number one love language is acts of service. If somebody just offers to take out the trash for me, it's like, I am not worthy. Just for some reason, that is my thing. And so I also find that I tend to give out more acts of service rather than gifts, like wrapped gifts and things like that. Words of affirmation is another beautiful gift that we can give one another to be positive and uplifting to one another. And since we're already on the topic, I'll just mention I guess the only one I haven't mentioned is physical touch. And sometimes just putting your hand on somebody's shoulder or touching them on the back or giving them a massage can be a wonderful gift. So maybe our task is to learn the love language of those who you dearly love and to express in that way.
Roger, you mentioned the hierarchy of giving, so to speak, from the Jewish tradition, and that keys into the presentation that you gave us earlier this year. What was that Hebrew name for that? It's not the Tikkun Olam. What is it called?
The Hebrew name for giving?
Yeah. Or maybe you didn't bring it up then.
Maybe I didn't. Or maybe I'm getting old.
But it does seem to be very much a part of the Jewish tradition that is really admirable, that that being a benefactor seems to me to be something that bestows greater esteem upon someone than being wealthy, for example. And so that seems like a really high quality. And I'm thinking of the Native American potlatches, where people, a chief was considered to be truly great the more that he gave away in his potlatches.
It's interesting how that gets twisted around too. There's so many as we're talking. It's just obvious. There's so many pluses and minuses. You can you can give away and be building up your own self-esteem and your own credit, and it kind of loses a lot of value. But on the other hand, it's nice to have done that. The Potlatch Indians, I think part of their idea was that if you have too much, it's hard to take care of it. And so giving things away eases up your life to get rid of things you don't need. So I think that's interesting. And I think the potlatch, the idea of everybody comes to a dinner and brings something, that's where that name comes from. It just seems fascinating to me how everything you do, it's your motivation, and you can do it and it's good, but if your motivation is true, if it's pure and you're really trying to help, it's that much better. So it's quite an area of interesting psychology.
Yeah, Diana.
Just seeing, were those your grandchildren?
All
I
right.
think
Yes.
the biggest gift is having children and grandchildren around and being able to be present with them and feel that love and to be able to experience that time together. And I'm just so happy for you that you're doing that. It makes my heart smile to see that, and to have your mom and dad here. I mean, Oh my gosh, this is such a gift. And it's a gift for all of us of how you support each other and love each other. And Nancy, you are just amazing in your reading and the way that you express yourself with your the words that you use and just your whole being. So I'm really thankful. This is a great gift to all of us, Renee, that we can see and be with your family. So thank you.
I have a question for people to consider is what is one of the most valuable gifts that you've ever received and why? Yeah, Kevin.
I was living with two immigrants who came to this country in Las Vegas, one from Cuba and one from Ukraine. And so prior to the war in Ukraine in 2017, I was able to go visit her home, Venitsa. And this young lady was a circus acrobat that was involved in a fairly serious accident. It was a career-ending accident for her. She did an act suspended by her hair, and unfortunately, the mechanism snapped and she fell 30 feet to basically concrete ground. So it was a very stressful time in my professional life because, you know, just dealing with the workers' comp, and it was a catastrophic loss for the company. But I will never forget, I went to her home country and I met her father, who was like a fire chief of this local fire brigade in their village. And he presented me with this little badge, and it was basically what they would give one of their members, a firefighter who did a very brave act or, you know, made an impact somehow. And I'll never forget that feeling of, you know, it, for me, it was just instinct, because when you're in a performing community, they basically are the family members you never wanted. But no, it was just second nature. But just for that really nice honor, and you know, we didn't speak the same language, but you could tell that his love and, you know, respect for how everything was handled was truly uplifting. And I still have the badge today. It's displayed in a case, and it just whenever I feel that, you know, things are going rough for me, I just always circle back to those families that are still stuck in Ukraine, even the Russians that are being subjected to a lot of things that they didn't sign up for just because of their leaders' ideology. So I just is a great beacon of continuation, perseverance, and tenacity, I think.
Yeah, that's really a beautiful gift that you received, and I can see why you treasure it so much. That's something that I appreciated was through our kids growing up. She would always take all of Cliff and my kids and all of my brother Todd's kids. So she had 6 kids that she would keep for a week during something that she called Cousins Week. And that gave us as couples the chance to take a vacation that otherwise we wouldn't have had without somebody taking full-time care of our children. And you know, it formed really strong bonds between those 6 cousins that persist to this day, because they lived hundreds of miles away from one another. And so it was a gift to many people when she gave that one. Cliff?
Was when we Arunachala in South India. It's a sacred mountain, and I went to India with our daughter Sandhya, and we went around this mountain, and we came to this little village after we went around the mountain, and we met these wonderful people, and the kids wanted to borrow our camera, and they took all these pictures of themselves and us with the camera. And then 10 years later, Renee, you and I went around the mountain, and that's where we came upon that little temple where that they were having that ceremony, shaving the hair. But then we actually ended up seeing the very same people when we went back into that village. And the lady who we knew brought out, we had sent them the photos. Somehow we got an address and we sent the photos to them from Sunday and I's trip. And they brought out an album with all these photos in it from 10 years before. And the lady invited us for breakfast the next morning in her little, very simple house with a clay floor. And those were the best dosas we've ever had in our lives. Even though Vina makes really good ones, these were the best. It was the best gift ever by these very simple people in India. I would say those doses were such a wonderful, wonderful gift.
And meanwhile, she was feeding her children little cups of milk with little cheap store-bought cookies. And I was wondering if they would have been eating those dosas otherwise.
Mhm.
Yeah. And she gave us the only two chairs she had in her home to sit on. They were little plastic chairs. And she just squatted at the simple stove that she was working at in that kitchen. Yeah, that was a gift.
I'd make a contribution here if I may.
Oh, please.
Yeah, I don't think that any of the things that I cherish are material, but it's difficult to pick out acts of kindness. But I would say those that I've received, and there have been many on very many different levels, but those would be my observation about acts of kindness.
And David mentioned you can also often tell what love language somebody speaks by what they give. And I know you to have done many acts of kindness, Dad. Yeah. Roger?
Yeah, I suddenly came to me that when I was 10 or 11, my aunt gave me a brush for your hair that had some kind of the bristles were made of something that I was convinced it was really nice. And so I over the years, my aunt was the one who gave me the brush, was always wanting me to look good. She had this saying, clothes make the man. So she always wanted me to look good. And so I continued to use that brush over the years, and I still have it in my car. I use that brush to comb my hair, which is no longer as with me as much as it used to be. But even now, a lot of the bristles are missing. But I've had that brush now for 65 years. And not only does it still work well, but it reminds me of my aunt and makes me feel good and makes me remember to comb my hair and try to look good, so my aunt looking down will feel good about me.
Wonderful story.
That is a great one. I'd love to share something. During holiday time, we've often had relatives that what they would share or bring as their gift is a story. And having your mom read that beautiful story today, and so animated, so charming, was fabulous. And I think over the years, there's sometimes been a hula or a song or a story that is most remembered by our families, either from visiting friends or from other family members, so much more than anything material. So anyway, it was lovely to hear this story today.
Oh, yes. And Robin is someone who gives stories all the time. She's the editor of the midweek newspaper that comes out every week. And there's a personal story from someone in the community that's very uplifting. And it's called Chasing the Light. And Robin helps to collect these stories for the community. And so I want to thank you, Robin, for your stories, because that is a true gift.
This is Sandhya. I'm Clifford Renee's daughter and Nancy and Ray's granddaughter. Nana, I just want to thank you for all of your stories over the years to all of us grandkids and to all of the kids in Oakland, all of the different schools and classes and students. You've just given hundreds of stories to thousands of kids over the years. And it's just been really magical, I think, for all of them. So thank you for sharing this story with us tonight. We love you so much.
Yes, indeed, indeed.
I have to thank, of course, the authors of all the stories I tell. I seldom make up my own stories, so all of those authors are the ones that get the credit. Thank you very much. So I'm glad you enjoyed it.